Ethan Cole jolted awake to the smooth, jazz-infused alarm that echoed through his Manhattan penthouse. The walls, outfitted with state-of-the-art speakers, played the same song every morning at precisely 7 a.m. His eyes opened, but they weren't met with the sunlight he craved. Instead, a foggy gray sky pressed against the glass walls of his bedroom, stretching over the sprawling city beneath him. 53 stories above the streets of New York, Ethan could see the sharp outlines of skyscrapers, but everything felt strangely small. The city, so bustling below, seemed quieter, as if it were all part of a grand set. Another day. Another routine. This again, Ethan muttered under his breath, the chill of the morning air slipping through the cracks of the room, even though the heat was on full blast. 31 years old, and still so far away from understanding the life he was living. The digital clock on his bedside table blinked back at him. 7:02. Ethan stretched, yawning widely, before turning his attention to the view. His penthouse apartment was a fortress of steel and glass, a symbol of success and a life many envied. Yet, as he looked out at the fog-covering Central Park, he couldn't shake the emptiness that gnawed at him. His alarm chirped a second time, louder this time. "Okay, okay. I'm getting up," he grumbled, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. 5 minutes later, Ethan found himself in his home gym, running on a treadmill that had never been used to its full potential. The sleek machine buzzed as it tracked his every step, a high-tech marvel. Yet, Ethan wasn't looking at the numbers flashing on the screen. He was staring out at the glass wall again, lost in thought. The city below him was always in motion, much like himself, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was running in place. Always moving, never getting anywhere, he thought bitterly, the hum of the treadmill filling the empty space around him. A soft voice broke through his reverie. "Good morning, Mr. Cole. Breakfast is ready, and your schedule has been updated," came the voice of his assistant, Nora, chiming in from the intercom. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow and slowed his pace. "Thanks," he mumbled, reaching for the towel. He had no idea how long Nora had been working for him. A year. Maybe 2. He couldn't remember. He didn't even bother to learn her last name. She wasn't someone he needed to know. Everyone in his world was disposable. He was the type of person who couldn't be bothered with the mundane details, preferring to stay locked in his bubble of wealth and prestige. With a small grunt, Ethan turned off the treadmill and headed toward the dining room. The massive table stretched in front of him, an architectural feat that could comfortably seat 16 people. But, of course, it was always just him. The room was pristine, untouched except for his solitary place setting. As usual, the same luxurious breakfast awaited him. Avocado toast, fresh fruit, eggs prepared to perfection, and orange juice squeezed from the finest oranges money could buy. Ethan sat down, his hand mechanically picking up the toast. His eyes, however, were glued to his tablet as he skimmed through reports and updates. The numbers were glowing on the screen, but they felt so hollow. His company's stock prices had jumped another $12 million since yesterday, and it was business as usual. Another million here, another few million there. But nothing moved inside him. His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. Board meeting at 9 a.m. Investor lunch at 12:30. Interview with Fortune at 3 o'clock. Gala at 7 o'clock, said Nora's voice, crackling from the speaker. Right. Got it, Ethan mumbled, shoveling down the last bit of toast without tasting it. Anything from Emma? No, sir. Not a thing, Nora replied, a note of concern edging into her voice. Of course, there was nothing. His sister hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Not since the fight about the family trust. She was the only one who truly understood the weight of being a Cole, but she had walked away, leaving him behind. She was the one person who could see past the image, who knew what it meant to grow up under the shadow of a legacy that had never truly brought him peace. He finished his breakfast in silence and made his way to his massive walk-in closet. He pulled on an impeccably tailored suit, the fabric designed for only one purpose: to impress. A quick glance in the mirror showed a sharp, confident man with a face that revealed nothing of the turmoil roiling inside him. Ethan was a master at hiding his emotions, even from himself. He was, after all, the face of Cole Industries, and his public persona demanded perfection. As the elevator whisked him down to the garage, the automated system gave him another reminder. "Your driver is waiting, Mr. Cole. Have a productive day." The elevator doors opened, and standing there was the usual sight: his sleek black Mercedes-Benz, parked perfectly, waiting to take him to his next meeting. But that was when it hit him. He didn't want the car today. For once, he didn't want to be driven around like a showpiece. He needed to be alone, to think. So, instead of stepping into the car, he waved it off. "I'll walk today," he said, surprising even himself. As he walked through the crisp Manhattan air, the cool wind against his face felt different. It wasn't just another city day. Ethan found himself surrounded by the buzz of New York, something he hadn't experienced for a long time. The smell of street vendors, the rush of honking cars, the murmur of conversations all around him. For the first time in years, Ethan felt connected to something real. He walked aimlessly, the streets of the city bustling around him, until he found himself in front of a small, unassuming bakery. The faded sign above the door read, "Tommy's Bakehouse." Ethan stood there for a moment, scanning the area. This wasn't a place he would usually visit, too humble, too ordinary. But today, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he stepped inside. The small bell above the door jingled as he entered. Inside, the warmth of freshly baked bread filled the air. The shop was small, cluttered with mismatched tables and chairs, but there was something about the place that felt authentic, real, not manufactured. A man with graying hair and a flour-covered apron stood behind the counter. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice friendly but worn. Ethan smiled for the first time that day. "Yeah, I'll have a coffee and a roast beef sandwich," he said, feeling oddly at home. The man, who introduced himself as Tommy, smiled back. "First time here? Been running this place for 30 years. Ethan nodded, taking a seat at one of the corner tables. He sipped the hot coffee, black and strong, in a simple ceramic mug. Nothing fancy, just the way it should be. Tommy soon brought over the sandwich. Ethan took a bite. It wasn't the finest food he'd ever tasted, but it was honest. It felt real. The small talk that followed with Tommy was light and easy. For once, Ethan didn't have to pretend to be someone he wasn't. No boardrooms, no cameras, just two people, sharing a quiet moment in a humble bakery. When it was time to leave, Ethan reached into his coat pocket for his wallet. It was thick with cash, hundreds and fifties, the bills stacked neatly. He paid Tommy generously, then tucked the wallet back into his jacket. Or so he thought. Unaware, Ethan left the bakery, stepping back out onto the street, his mind still processing the unfamiliar feeling of peace. But as he turned the corner and disappeared into the crowd, his wallet, the very thing that symbolized his entire world, slipped from his pocket and landed unnoticed on the wet pavement. It remained there, untouched, as the city moved around it. The small black leather wallet sat unnoticed on the damp sidewalk for nearly 20 minutes. Pedestrians hustled by, wrapped up in their own routines, their footsteps echoing against the city's cold pavement. The late afternoon light glimmered off the wet streets, but no one paused to look at the lost object. It lay quietly, its contents a silent story waiting to be uncovered. Lily and Noah Miller were the first to stop. Lily, the older of the two, had a hand wrapped tightly around her younger brother Noah's, her grip firm yet protective. They stood at the corner of 43rd Street, their eyes fixed on the weathered sign of Tommy's Bakehouse across the road. The scent of fresh bread wafted through the cool evening air, teasing their empty stomachs. "Do you think Mr. Tommy has any leftover bread?" Lily asked, her voice low but hopeful. Noah, whose stomach had been growling for hours, nodded weakly. "I'm hungry," he whispered, his pale face flushed with cold. Lily squeezed his hand tighter, a mix of determination and responsibility in her young eyes. She had been the caretaker since their mother passed away. It wasn't easy, but she couldn't let Noah go without food. "Let's try," she said quietly. "I'll see if he has any." They started walking towards the bakery, their bare feet tapping softly on the pavement. The chill of the evening air made their torn socks feel inadequate against the cold. Their clothes were tattered, and their faces were etched with exhaustion, but they pushed forward, their minds focused on one thing: food. As they passed by the spot where Ethan had accidentally dropped his wallet, Noah's sharp eyes caught sight of the small black object. "Look!" he exclaimed, his voice loud with surprise. "What's that?" Lily stopped, following her brother's pointing finger. Her eyes widened at the sight of the wallet, resting on the edge of the sidewalk like a secret no one had noticed. Without thinking, Lily knelt down, still holding onto Noah's hand. Her fingers brushed the leather gently as she picked it up. It was heavier than she expected, and when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside, she found what appeared to be a small fortune, neatly stacked $100 bills, credit cards embossed with elegant names, and a few papers she couldn't read. Noah's stomach growled again, louder this time. His eyes were wide as he looked up at his sister. "Can we buy bread now?" he asked, his voice shaky. Lily hesitated. She knew what the right thing to do was, but the temptation was there, staring her in the face. All this money. It could buy them food for days, maybe even weeks. They wouldn't have to sleep on the streets anymore. They wouldn't have to beg for scraps. Her small fingers trembled as she closed the wallet and looked around. The bakery was right there. They could get enough bread to last them for a while, maybe even some hot soup. But what about the rest of the money? What if someone came looking for it? Lily took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the street for any sign of the wallet's owner. She didn't see anyone around, but her mind was already made up. "We'll return it," she said firmly, turning to Noah. "It's not ours. We can't keep it." "But we're hungry," Noah said quietly, his voice full of worry. Lily closed the wallet again, the weight of the decision heavy in her hand. She slipped it into the pocket of her oversized jacket. "We'll just take a little. I'll buy bread. Then we'll bring it back." She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, a scrap of notebook paper she had saved from the school trash bin months ago. Using a chewed pencil, she wrote a quick note, her handwriting shaky but clear. "I'm sorry my brother is hungry. I took just one bill to buy bread. I promise I'll pay you back." She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into the wallet, placing it atop the bills. "We'll come back, Noah. I promise," she whispered to him, feeling both guilty and relieved. Noah nodded, too young to fully understand the weight of what was happening, but trusting his sister completely. They walked into the bakery together, the bell above the door jingling softly. Tommy, who had been preparing the last of the evening's bread, looked up at the sound of their entrance. His eyes softened as he saw the familiar faces of the two children who often came by at closing time, hoping for leftovers. "Lily, Noah," he greeted them warmly. "You both hungry? I saved some bread for you." Lily, clutching the wallet tightly in one hand and the $20 bill in the other, approached the counter. "Mr. Tommy, we found this outside." She extended the wallet toward him, her fingers trembling slightly. "It has a lot of money inside." Tommy's smile faded as he took the wallet from her, his eyes scanning its contents. He opened it slowly, and the first thing he saw was the note Lily had written. His heart tightened as he read the words, his eyes softening. He looked from the wallet to Lily's earnest eyes and then to Noah, who stood by her side, shivering in his worn-out clothes. "I took this bill to buy bread for Noah," Lily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's really hungry. I promise I'll pay you back when I can." Tommy's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the children. He was touched by their honesty, their selflessness. He knew what hunger felt like, but to see such integrity in these two tiny souls was something he would never forget. "Do you know who this wallet belongs to?" he asked gently, his voice choked with emotion. Lily shook her head. "It has the name Ethan Cole on it, but I don't know anyone by that name." Tommy nodded, instantly recognizing the name of one of the wealthiest men in the city. He'd heard it plenty of times, of course. Ethan Cole, the young tech mogul who'd made billions, but had the reputation of someone who had everything, and still seemed empty. "I'll hold on to it," Tommy said, his voice quiet but firm. "If Mr. Cole comes back, I'll give it to him. As for the bread," he said, turning back to grab a warm loaf, "you don't have to pay me for it. Take it." Lily, however, extended the $20 bill again. "I want to pay this time," she said with a quiet but unmistakable sense of pride. "That way, I don't owe anything." Tommy hesitated for a moment, a lump rising in his throat, but finally accepted the money. He handed her the bread and a few cookies, watching as she carefully tucked the change into her pocket. "You both take care of each other," Tommy said softly. "You're good kids." Lily gave him a small smile. "Thank you, Mr. Tommy." Then, with a soft grunt, she turned toward Noah, who was already devouring a piece of the bread. The two children left the bakery and disappeared into the evening. The cool wind had picked up again, but they didn't seem to mind. As they walked down the street, the warmth of the bread in their hands made the cold air more bearable. Lily's heart still ached with guilt, but the promise she had made to return the wallet gave her some peace. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she had done the right thing. Tommy watched them leave, standing by the counter, feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of life these children had led, and what kind of future lay ahead for them. And then, as he cleaned up for the night, his thoughts kept returning to the wallet, to the wealth it represented, and to the people who had lost sight of the simple truths Lily and Noah still held dear. Ethan Cole couldn't stop thinking about the wallet he had lost. The image of the two children at Tommy's bakehouse kept haunting him. The little girl, Lily, had returned the wallet with a promise so sincere despite their hunger and hardship. She had taken only a single $20 bill to buy bread for her younger brother, Noah. Despite the temptation of a small fortune, Lily chose to keep her integrity and return the wallet. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The words she had written in the note, the honesty, the responsibility in her small, trembling hands, it all stirred something in him that he hadn't felt in years. He remembered the way she explained that she would return the wallet to its rightful owner. She had done the right thing, even though their situation was desperate. Ethan realized something that night. Tomorrow he would find them. The next morning He awoke with a sense of purpose that had eluded him for years. He had never been one to search for anyone. He was used to having everything at his fingertips: relationships, meetings, transactions. He could control every detail of his life. But searching for Lily and Noah was different. He didn't know where they lived, he had no information about their family, and no one seemed to know who they were. But one thing was clear: he had to find them. The search wasn't going to be easy. Ethan, accustomed to walking through boardrooms and private jets, didn't know where to begin. But he was determined. Over the next few days, he walked the streets of New York City, through alleys and back streets, places he had never ventured before. The noise of the city was overwhelming, but he pushed through, questioning shopkeepers, cafe owners, and passers-by about two homeless children. No one seemed to know. The few who gave him vague answers were no help. He was used to getting what he wanted, but this was different. It was as if the city had swallowed Lily and Noah whole. Ethan found himself in the darker parts of town, the areas he had always avoided. It was a side of the city he had never seen up close, a world of rough corners and harsh realities. But it wasn't just the physical world that was unfamiliar. He realized that the people here, the ones he had avoided for so long, were the ones who could see the truth of what was happening. They had all witnessed the hardship, the suffering, the loneliness. It was a different kind of reality, one that Ethan had never been a part of. On the third day, he found himself walking through the East Village, the faint glow of streetlights casting long shadows along the sidewalks. He stopped at a small corner cafe where an elderly woman sat outside, drinking a cup of coffee. Her face was weathered, with deep lines from years of struggle, yet there was something wise in her eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am," Ethan said, his voice tentative. "I'm looking for two children, Lily and Noah. They've been seen around here. Do you know them?" The woman paused, her wrinkled hands clutching her coffee cup. She studied Ethan for a moment before responding. "Lily and Noah? Yeah, I know them. They come by here from time to time. That girl, she looks out for her little brother. I've seen 'em around the block. They don't say much about where they're staying, though. But I've seen 'em around here, yeah." Ethan's heart quickened. "Do you know where they go? Do you know where they stay?" The woman took another sip of coffee, and after a long pause, she nodded slowly. "There's an old building a few blocks away. A lot of people hang around there. Some homeless folks. It's not much, but it's something. Might be where they're hiding." Ethan thanked the woman and hurried down the street, his footsteps quickening with urgency. He felt a tightness in his chest as he walked toward the abandoned building. It was surreal. He had lived in New York his whole life, yet he had never seen this side of it. He had always stayed in his bubble, in his shiny towers of success, but now, as he walked deeper into the city's underbelly, he felt his world shifting. The building was an old, run-down structure, its windows broken, its entrance barely intact. Ethan stood in front of it for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts before stepping inside. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The inside was dark, musty, the smell of mildew hanging in the air. The floors creaked beneath his feet as he ventured deeper into the building, looking for any sign of the two children. After checking several rooms, Ethan finally made his way up to the third floor. There, in one of the rooms, he found signs of life: a worn-out mattress on the floor, a few pieces of clothing neatly folded, and some crayon drawings tacked to the walls with duct tape. The drawings were simple but vivid: two children holding hands, with a figure of a woman above them, her arms outstretched, perhaps a mother figure. The sight of those drawings hit Ethan harder than he expected. He stood in the middle of the room, staring at them for a long time. He didn't know what he was looking for, but something about this place, the simplicity, the rawness of it, struck him deep. He knew these were the children he had been searching for. The realization made him feel more urgent, more connected to their lives. He wasn't just searching for a lost wallet anymore. He was searching for two souls who had been left behind in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. Ethan left the building, determined to return the next day. He knew now where they were, and more than that, he knew he couldn't let them slip through his fingers. The search wasn't over. It had just begun. The next morning, Ethan didn't waste any time. He woke up early, his heart still racing with the determination he had felt the day before. The coldness of the night had seeped into his bones, but it couldn't extinguish the warmth that had bloomed in his chest. The images of Lily and Noah, their innocent faces, their honesty, filled his mind, and he knew that he was going to find them. He couldn't let them slip away again. The building he had visited yesterday, the one near the East Village, was still fresh in his memory. As he stood in front of the massive, crumbling structure, he felt a deep sense of unease, a twinge of guilt. This wasn't the world he had ever been part of. It wasn't the luxury, the comfort, or the prestige he was used to. But somehow, the thought of those two small children, living in such dire circumstances, pushed all his discomfort aside. Ethan pulled his coat tighter around him as the wind picked up. It was the kind of cold that gnawed at you, making every step feel heavier than the last. But he pressed on. He approached the building again, this time more resolute. There were more signs of life than before. Garbage bags stacked on the curb, the smell of stale bread wafting out from a nearby deli, the occasional passerby glancing at him with disinterest. But it was the building that still stood there, broken and worn down by time, like it had given up long ago. Yet inside there was life, and there was Lily and Noah, hiding in plain sight. When he entered, the silence seemed to greet him, thick and heavy. His boots clicked on the cracked floors as he made his way to the same room he had visited the day before. The drawings on the wall were still there, a testament to the children's resilience and their search for beauty in a place where beauty seemed absent. Ethan stood in front of them for a moment, taking it all in. The drawings were simple, yet powerful. Stick figures, perhaps drawn by Lily herself, depicting her and Noah holding hands, with a faint, angelic figure hovering above them. Maybe it was their mother, maybe it wasn't. It didn't matter. What mattered was that these children had found a way to hold on to something, anything, that made them feel safe, that gave them hope. Ethan's heart tightened. This wasn't just about finding lost children. It was about saving them from a life they didn't deserve. The world outside these walls was a world of opportunity, but here, in this crumbling building, there was nothing but survival. He moved through the room, his eyes catching on small details, the worn mattress on the floor, the scraps of food left on an old cardboard box, the scattered belongings that somehow seemed more precious than anything he had ever owned. Ethan wondered how long they had been living here. Days, weeks, longer. A cold chill swept through the room, and for a brief moment Ethan could almost hear the soft voices of the children. They had been here alone, with no one to care for them, no one to keep them safe. But Ethan had a different plan. He would be the one to care for them now. Determined, he turned on his heel and made his way out of the room. He was no longer just a man on a mission. He had a purpose now. He had something to fight for. Something beyond business deals and boardroom meetings. This was real. This was life. As he exited the building, the wind hit him again, colder this time. But it didn't matter. He knew exactly what he had to do. He had to find Lily and Noah, bring them to safety, and give them the life they deserved. Ethan didn't bother calling his driver. Today, he was going to do this his way. He walked through the streets of the East Village, his mind racing with possibilities. He asked a few more people he met along the way, but no one knew anything concrete. It was as if the children had vanished into thin air. But Ethan was stubborn, and he wasn't about to give up. He continued his search through the side streets and hidden alleys, retracing his steps until, finally, he came across a familiar sight, a park bench in a small, quiet park tucked away from the noise of the city. There, sitting on the bench, was Lily. Her head was lowered, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Noah was by her side, his small head resting on her shoulder. They looked so out of place in this peaceful setting, like they didn't belong here, like they had never belonged anywhere. Ethan stood still for a moment, just watching them. He couldn't move. He wasn't sure if he was relieved or terrified. But then Lily looked up, her eyes wide when she saw him standing there. "Jamie?" she asked, her voice hesitant. For a split second, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The way she said his name, it sounded like a whisper of hope, as if she were afraid to believe in it. "Lily," he said softly, taking a cautious step toward her. "I've been looking for you. For both of you." Noah stirred at the sound of his voice, his eyes blinking open as he looked up at Ethan. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice still sleepy but filled with curiosity. Ethan knelt down in front of them, trying to seem as non-threatening as possible. "I'm Jamie," he said, smiling gently. "You remember me, don't you?" Lily nodded slowly, her eyes flicking nervously between him and Noah. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone defensive. "Are you going to take us back to the orphanage?" Ethan's heart sank at her words. It was clear that she still feared being taken away. "No," he said firmly. "I'm not going to take you anywhere. I'm here to help. I want to make sure you and Noah have a safe place to stay. I want to take care of you." Lily hesitated, but then, as if she couldn't hold back any longer, she stood up and walked toward him, her hand still clutching Noah's. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. Ethan nodded. "I promise." Ethan could feel his heart pounding in his chest as Lily and Noah stood in front of him, their young faces still filled with hesitation and uncertainty. They were standing on the edge of a new life, and he had promised them a safe place, a promise he was determined to keep. Lily looked at him, her small face guarded but hopeful. She had seen enough disappointment in her life to be wary of any offer of help. But something in Ethan's voice, in the way he stood there, open and sincere, made her pause. "Are you really going to let us stay with you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, but filled with a gravity that caught Ethan off guard. "Yes," he replied without hesitation, his voice steady and sure. "For as long as you need. There's no rush. Just let me help you." Noah, who had been clutching his sister's hand the entire time, looked up at Ethan with wide eyes. He was quiet, absorbing everything, still unsure of the stranger before him. But his curiosity slowly overcame his shyness. "Is it okay if I stay with you too?" he asked, his voice small but undeniably innocent. Ethan crouched down so he was at their level, his eyes softening as he looked at them. "Of course," he said. "You're both welcome to stay. You'll be safe. You'll have food, warmth, and a bed." Lily didn't know what to say. For so long she had been the one taking care of Noah, keeping them both alive on the streets, moving from place to place, surviving day by day. The idea of stability, of having a real home, felt so foreign to her. She had never imagined this kind of life. But now, standing there with Ethan, she saw a glimpse of something she never allowed herself to believe in: hope. She glanced at Noah, who was still holding on to her tightly, and then at Ethan. The vulnerability in her eyes softened. "Okay," she said quietly, nodding. "We'll stay." The weight of the decision hung in the air for a moment. But then Ethan's reassuring smile broke through, and the tension that had been coiled so tightly around Lily seemed to dissipate. She reached out a small hand toward him, unsure but willing to trust. Ethan gently took her hand, leading them both toward the street. The city seemed so much smaller now, as if the weight of the world had shifted for the better. The cold wind that had once felt harsh now felt more like a reminder of how far they had come, how far they still had to go. As they walked down the street together, the noise of the city seemed less deafening, the bright lights of New York less blinding. There was something peaceful about this moment. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt at ease. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just walking through the city. He was walking with someone. They reached his car, and Ethan opened the door for them, letting them settle into the back seat. It was a strange feeling, being with these children, who had come into his life in such a sudden, unexpected way. But now he felt a deep sense of responsibility, a sense of connection to them that he couldn't explain. This wasn't about saving them for some noble cause. It was about them becoming part of his life, and him becoming part of theirs. The ride to his penthouse was silent, but not awkward. The weight of the promise Ethan had made hung between them, and the anticipation of what lay ahead was enough to keep them all quiet. Lily and Noah had never been in a car like this before, and Ethan could see the way they glanced around, taking in the luxury of the leather seats and the clean, warm air. It was so different from everything they had known, so different from the world they had left behind. When they arrived at the penthouse, Ethan led them inside, showing them the large, open living space that seemed almost too grand for two children. The marble floors gleamed, and the high ceilings echoed with the silence of a place that had never truly felt like home to him. "This is it," he said softly. "I know it's a little big, but you can make it your own. There are plenty of rooms, plenty of space. And there's food, too. Whatever you want." Lily took a tentative step inside, looking around with wide eyes. She had never seen anything like this. The polished wood of the furniture, the sparkling chandelier above them. It was like stepping into another world. But it was not an alien world anymore. It was theirs. Noah, who had been quietly taking in everything, suddenly ran over to the couch, plopping down onto the cushions with a delighted giggle. He kicked his legs out and smiled, clearly overwhelmed but also thrilled. "This is so cool," he said, his eyes lighting up. Ethan chuckled, watching the boy. "Glad you like it," he said, feeling a warmth spread through him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt like he was truly connected to something, not just to the city, or to the wealth he had spent so many years amassing, but to the people who mattered. Lily turned to him, still standing in the doorway, but her expression had softened. She was no longer just a wary child looking for a place to hide. She was beginning to believe that this might be real, that she and Noah could have a future beyond the streets. "Do you really want to take care of us?" Lily asked, her voice small but filled with a surprising vulnerability. Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "Yes, I promise I will. You're both safe here." Lily gave him a small, hesitant smile, the first real smile he had seen from her. It was a smile full of hope, and it made Ethan realize that this was more than just a promise to them. It was a promise to himself, to finally do something that truly mattered. Later that evening, as the sun set over the city and the stars began to twinkle above, Ethan sat at the dinner table with Lily and Noah. The three of them shared a simple meal, chicken and vegetables, nothing extravagant, but it was warm and comforting. For the first time in what felt like ages, the apartment wasn't empty. It was full of life. Lily and Noah laughed at something silly Noah had said, and Ethan found himself laughing too. It wasn't forced. It wasn't a show. It was real. And for the first time, he felt like he had a family that he had been searching for without even knowing it. As the night wore on, and Noah eventually drifted off to sleep in the guest bedroom Ethan had prepared for him, Lily stayed up for a while, sitting with him in the living room. Her eyes were soft as she watched Noah sleep, a sense of peace settling in her features. "I don't know what to do now," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never had a place like this." Ethan smiled gently, leaning back in his chair. "You don't have to worry about that. You can just be yourself here. You and Noah both." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a gratitude she couldn't quite express. "Thank you, Jamie," she whispered. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat at the sound of her calling him that. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was someone they could rely on. And in that moment, he knew that everything had changed, for all of them. The following days were a whirlwind of adjustments for Ethan, Lily, and Noah. The penthouse, once a symbol of Ethan's lonely success, was slowly transforming into a home. The walls that had once echoed with silence now resonated with the laughter and voices of children. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt what it was like to be needed, to be part of something real, something that didn't involve business deals or billion-dollar transactions. The mornings had a new rhythm. Ethan would wake up early, as usual, but now, instead of rushing to a board meeting or reviewing financial reports, he found himself making breakfast for Lily and Noah. A simple meal, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, was enough to get them started. They ate together at the dining table, and Noah would chatter on about his adventures at preschool, while Lily, still quiet but more comfortable with each passing day, listened intently, occasionally adding her thoughts. Noah's energy was endless, bouncing from one activity to the next. He'd draw pictures, build forts out of cushions, and run through the apartment with the joy of a child who had discovered a world of possibilities. Ethan couldn't help but smile every time he saw the boy's boundless enthusiasm. For someone so small, Noah had a way of making everything seem brighter, more alive. Lily, on the other hand, was more reserved. She spent hours in her room, reading the books Ethan had bought for her, her focus sharp. She had always been the caretaker, the one who had to grow up too fast. But now, in this new environment, Ethan could see the flicker of a child beginning to emerge from behind the walls she had built to protect herself. He could see the way her eyes softened when she looked at Noah, the way she started to smile when he would bring her a drawing he had made. She was beginning to trust. But even with all the progress, there were still moments of hesitation. Late at night, when Noah was asleep, Lily would sometimes sit quietly by the window, her face lost in thought. Ethan could see the weight she carried, worry for her brother, fear of the unknown, and the constant concern about what would happen next. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the city, Ethan found Lily sitting on the balcony, staring out at the skyline. She hadn't noticed him approach until he spoke. "Lily," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay?" Lily turned to him, her eyes a little too wide, as though she'd been holding back something. "I'm fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan stepped closer, sitting down beside her. "You know you can talk to me, right?" he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "About anything." Lily hesitated, her fingers playing with the hem of her sleeve. I don't know if I can get used to this," she said quietly. "All of this. It's so different from what I'm used to." Ethan nodded. He understood. The life they had lived before wasn't something she could just forget. It wasn't something she could unsee. But it was also a life she didn't have to return to. You don't have to get used to it all at once, Ethan said gently. Take your time. You and Noah, you've been through a lot. But you're safe now. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. Lily looked at him then, her eyes filled with an emotion that Ethan couldn't quite place. It was a mix of uncertainty and hope, of fear and longing. Do you really mean that? She asked, her voice so soft it almost broke his heart. Ethan met her gaze, his words sincere. I do. I'll always mean it. She nodded slowly, as though absorbing his words, letting them settle into her heart. After a long pause, she spoke again. Thank you, Jamie, she said, the nickname sounding more natural now, more like something she could hold on to. Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through him. You're welcome. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but rather, it felt like a quiet understanding, a moment where the past and present collided, where two people, once strangers, were now connected by something deeper than words. A few days later, Ethan found himself preparing for something he had been dreading since the moment he decided to take Lily and Noah in, the visit with social services. Sarah Daniels, the social worker assigned to their case, had been persistent. While Ethan had been focused on giving the children a sense of normalcy, she had been tirelessly making sure that everything was handled legally. Today was the day they would meet again, and Ethan had a feeling this meeting would be different. He had done everything by the book, ensuring that the children were enrolled in school, that they had medical coverage, that their needs were met. But there was always that lingering question: would social services approve of him as a guardian? At 3 p.m., Sarah arrived at the penthouse, her clipboard in hand. She looked professional as always, her demeanor calm but observant. Ethan greeted her at the door, offering her a seat in the living room. Lily and Noah were playing in the corner, Noah excitedly showing Lily his latest creation, a tower of blocks taller than he was. Good to see you again, Ethan, Sarah said, sitting down. How are things going with the kids? They're adjusting well, Ethan replied, his eyes flicking to the children. It's not perfect, but we're getting there. Noah's been enjoying preschool, and Lily's getting more comfortable with everything. Sarah nodded, taking notes. That's good to hear. It's always a delicate transition. They've been through a lot. Ethan's heart tightened at her words. He knew the kids had been through more than anyone their age should have to endure. They had witnessed their mother's death, endured abandonment, and survived the streets. Now, in his home, he was trying to give them something stable, something they could depend on. But he knew it wasn't just about providing food and shelter. It was about showing them that they were worthy of love, of a future. I'm here to do a final check-in, Sarah said, looking up from her notes, and to ensure that everything is in order. I'll need to speak with the children as well. Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He had prepared for this moment, but it still made him nervous. It wasn't that he didn't want to give the children a future. It was that he knew how much was riding on this, on his ability to prove he could be the kind of guardian they needed. He stood up, crossing the room to where Lily and Noah were playing. "Hey, guys," he said softly. "Sarah's here. She just needs to talk to you for a little bit, okay?" Lily and Noah both looked up, their eyes wide. Lily nodded, but Noah, still in his world of imagination, was distracted by his blocks. "Do you want to talk first, Noah?" Ethan asked gently, kneeling beside him. Noah didn't respond, absorbed in his game. But Lily, sensing the tension in the room, stood up and walked towards Sarah, taking her hand. "I'll talk to her," she said, her voice steady. Ethan watched as Sarah led Lily into the corner, where she would ask her the usual questions about her well-being and adjust to the bureaucracy that came with the process. He stood back, watching, knowing that everything he had worked for was now in the hands of the system. But as he glanced at the two of them, he realized that no matter what happened next, he had done what was right. The future, for once, seemed a little more certain. The evening following the social services visit felt strangely quiet, almost like the calm before a storm. Ethan had always been accustomed to the noise of the city outside his windows, the constant hum of taxis, the bustle of New Yorkers going about their lives. But tonight, it was different. Inside the penthouse, there was a rare stillness. The air felt heavier somehow, as though the weight of the future was hanging in the balance. Ethan sat in the living room, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edges of a coffee cup, his mind replaying the day's events. The conversation with Sarah Daniels had gone well, all things considered. She seemed satisfied with the progress Lily and Noah had made. But the questions she had asked, the way she observed every interaction, made Ethan nervous. She was trying to measure not just their physical well-being, but their emotional state too. And no matter how hard Ethan tried to reassure himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still being judged. His life, his choices, all under scrutiny. Lily and Noah were in the other room, playing together. For a few minutes, Ethan listened to their laughter, the sound of their joy still so pure and untainted by the hardships they had endured. It was a sound he had never imagined hearing in his apartment, but now it felt like the soundtrack to a new life. Ethan knew he had done the right thing by bringing them here, by offering them a safe space. But there was still that nagging feeling in the back of his mind. Would the system allow it to continue? What if the judge saw things differently? What if, despite all his efforts, he couldn't prove that he was the right person to take care of them? As if on cue, his phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced down, seeing that it was a message from Sarah Daniels. "Ethan, I've received the preliminary report. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the next steps. Can we schedule a time?" His heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow. The uncertainty, the not knowing, felt almost unbearable. But there was no turning back now. He had promised Lily and Noah that they would be safe, and he intended to keep that promise. He quickly typed a response. "I'll be free at 3 p.m. tomorrow. See you then." The message was sent, and for a moment Ethan simply stared at the screen, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The future of Lily and Noah, of his own life, seemed so fragile at that moment. Would he be able to keep his promise? Would he be able to prove to the authorities that he was capable of giving them the stability and care they needed? The morning of the meeting with Sarah arrived sooner than expected. Ethan hadn't slept much the night before, his mind a swirl of thoughts and uncertainties. When the sun finally rose, it brought with it the weight of the day ahead. He had prepared himself as much as possible, but there were still so many unknowns. The penthouse was quiet in the early hours. Ethan had gone through his usual morning routine, making coffee, skimming through some work emails, checking his schedule, but it all felt hollow today. His mind kept drifting back to Lily and Noah, wondering how they were handling everything. They had been through so much already. Did they understand the gravity of the situation? Were they as scared as he was? Ethan glanced at the clock. It was almost time. He stood up, pulling on a blazer and buttoning it up as he prepared to face what was coming next. He couldn't let them down. Not now. Not after everything. When Sarah Daniels arrived, she was punctual, as always. Ethan greeted her at the door and led her into the living room. She took a seat across from him, clipboard in hand, her professional demeanor giving nothing away. Ethan tried to hide his nerves, but he knew Sarah could see right through him. "I've reviewed the progress reports," Sarah began, her voice calm but direct. "And while it's clear that you've made efforts to care for Lily and Noah, there are still some concerns." Ethan's stomach tightened at her words. He had expected something like this, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. "What kind of concerns?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. "Primarily, it's about long-term stability," Sarah continued. "I'm seeing improvement, of course, but we need to ensure that you can provide for them emotionally, not just physically. They've been through a lot, and they need someone who can offer consistent care, support, and—" she paused, glancing at her notes. "Love." Ethan nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "I understand. I've been doing everything I can to provide that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be that person for them." Sarah's eyes softened slightly, but she didn't allow herself to get too personal. "That's what I'm here to assess. We need to make sure this is the right situation for them. And we also need to be sure that they won't be in danger of losing that stability again." Ethan met her gaze, trying not to show the doubt that was creeping in. "I'm doing everything I can to give them the life they deserve. I'm not going to let anything happen to them." Sarah nodded but remained silent for a moment. She then flipped through her papers, adjusting her glasses as she focused on a page. "I'll need to do one more visit with them," she said. "A formal assessment, just to make sure everything is on track. After that, we'll proceed with the legal process." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "So, you're saying I'm doing okay?" She looked up at him, a faint smile on her lips. "I'm saying we're getting there. But there's still work to be done. It's not just about what you're doing for them now. It's about how you'll continue to care for them as they grow and heal." Ethan exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "I understand," he said, his voice more confident now. "And I will do whatever it takes." Sarah stood up, offering him a small nod. "I believe you. We're just being thorough. We'll reconvene after the next assessment, and I'll keep you informed of any updates. Keep up the good work, Ethan." He walked her to the door, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. He was getting there. He was so close to giving Lily and Noah the life they deserved. But there were still so many obstacles ahead. The legal system was slow, and their lives were still in limbo. As Sarah left, Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her walk down the hall. He felt the weight of the future pressing against him, but for the first time he felt ready to face it. He would fight for them. He had to. The days after his meeting with Sarah were filled with a quiet sense of anticipation. Ethan had never been one for waiting, especially not when something important was at stake. But that was exactly what he was doing now, waiting for the final assessment that would determine if he was fit to be Lily and Noah's permanent guardian. It was a process he hadn't expected to become so emotionally invested in. After all, he was used to controlling every aspect of his life, making decisions that were swift and final. But this was different. He spent the next few days reflecting on everything that had led him here. The first time he had met Lily and Noah in Tommy's bakehouse, the bond he had felt, despite knowing so little about them, had been so instant and strong. It felt as though they were meant to find each other, as though fate had finally opened a door he hadn't even realized was there. In the weeks since, his life had changed in ways he couldn't have imagined. He was no longer just a billionaire businessman. He was a father figure, a protector, and, most importantly, he was someone who finally felt like he had a purpose beyond accumulating wealth. Lily and Noah had become the center of his world. He watched them both grow in ways he had never thought possible. Lily, once so guarded and hesitant, was beginning to trust, to open up. Her shy smiles, the way she looked out for Noah, even her quiet curiosity about the world outside, all showed how much she had evolved. And Noah, with his boundless energy and innocent questions, had brought life into the apartment in ways Ethan had never experienced. For the first time, Ethan felt the joy of fatherhood, though he knew there was still so much to learn. But despite the growing bond between them, the looming uncertainty remained. Sarah's final assessment would be the key. If everything went well, they could finally start the process of formalizing their new family. But if the system saw things differently, if they decided that Ethan wasn't the right fit, it could all fall apart. Ethan woke up early the day of the final assessment, his usual routine now a mix of nervous anticipation and quiet resolve. He dressed carefully, not out of habit but because today felt different. The suit he wore felt like armor. He had always worn it to prepare for battles in boardrooms, for meetings that would affect millions of dollars. But today, it was different. Today, he was preparing for a battle of the heart. A battle to protect the future he had started to build with Lily and Noah. When Sarah arrived at the penthouse later that morning, Ethan was ready. He greeted her at the door, his smile more confident than he felt. Sarah was accompanied by a team of social workers who would be conducting the final evaluation. They moved through the penthouse quickly, observing the children's behavior, asking questions about their daily routines, and assessing the living environment. It all felt like a whirlwind of bureaucracy, but Ethan tried to stay focused. He wanted to show them that this wasn't just about following the rules, it was about the love and care he had for the children. Lily and Noah were a bit nervous when they realized the purpose of the visit. Ethan could see it in their eyes, the uncertainty, the fear that they might be taken away from him. He tried to reassure them, telling them that everything was fine, but even he couldn't help the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "Everything will be okay," he whispered to Lily as they sat together on the couch. "They're just making sure everything is good for you and Noah. They'll see how much we've all changed." Lily nodded, though she didn't seem convinced. Noah, ever the curious one, was more interested in the social workers than the process itself. He asked them questions about their jobs, about what they were doing there, and their answers were met with his trademark enthusiasm. It made Ethan smile, seeing how quickly Noah had adapted to his new life. As the evaluation continued, Ethan watched from the sidelines, his heart heavy with every question and answer. Sarah and the team were professional, yet Ethan could sense their scrutiny. He knew that social services had to be thorough, but it didn't make the process any easier. Finally, after what felt like hours, the assessment was complete. The team gathered their things, and Sarah motioned for Ethan to join her in the living room. "Well, Ethan," Sarah said, sitting down across from him, her clipboard still in hand, "we've completed the evaluation, and I'll be honest, the results are promising." Ethan's breath caught in his chest. He waited, hanging on her every word. "Lily and Noah are thriving here," Sarah continued. "They've clearly found a sense of stability and safety. You've done well in meeting their emotional and physical needs. The bond between you and them is undeniable." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he didn't want to get ahead of himself. "So, does that mean I'm—" Sarah smiled, though there was a hint of formality in her expression. "I'm recommending that you be granted provisional custody of Lily and Noah for the next 6 months. During that time, we'll continue to monitor their progress, but everything looks very positive. The judge should review this recommendation soon." Ethan could hardly believe it. After everything, after all the uncertainty, it was finally happening. He had done it. They were going to be his. "But," Sarah added, her tone shifting slightly, "there will still be a few follow-up visits. We need to ensure that this arrangement continues to work well for the children. But for now, this is a huge step forward." Ethan nodded, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "Thank you, Sarah. I promise you, I will do everything I can to make sure they're happy, safe, and loved." Sarah gave him a small nod. I believe you, Ethan. Just keep doing what you're doing." As she left the penthouse, Ethan stood by the door, his mind racing with the possibilities. This was just the beginning. There were still hurdles to clear, but for the first time, the future felt like it was in his hands. And he would do whatever it took to ensure that Lily and Noah never had to fear losing what they had found with him. When Ethan turned around, he saw Lily and Noah standing in the hallway, waiting for him. Lily, her eyes bright with a mixture of fear and hope, stepped forward. "Does that mean we can stay with you for good?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan knelt down to her level, his heart full. "Yes, Lily," he said softly. "You and Noah are staying with me. You're my family now, and nothing will change that." Noah, who had been quiet for most of the conversation, ran up to Ethan, throwing his arms around him. "Jamie!" he exclaimed, using the nickname again, the one that made Ethan's heart swell every time he heard it. Ethan held him tight, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lifting off his shoulders. "I'm so glad you're here with me, Noah," he whispered. For the first time in his life, Ethan didn't feel alone. He had found something worth fighting for, and he was ready to protect it, no matter what.